So I thought today we will look at the human locomotor system. In the announcements you may have heard it slightly different in the sense that we were highlighting that fact that we are going to talk a little bit about the bones, muscles, joints, tendons and ligaments. Now that was a technical description. I thought for those of you who are already here, let's start with a name that is more functional. So this is the human locomotor system. Now if you look at the picture that's given here, already it depicts that the person has a problem. So let's look at the system first. Now this is the very basic structure. As you can see, there are lots of bones and the names that are given there. This is one part of the locomotor system. Attached to the bones, and what makes the bones move is what is called the muscle. Now over here we have just highlighted one muscle. The picture that you see here, this part of the picture is actually the microscopic look of a muscle. Now if you look at the muscle, this red region is supplied with a lot of blood. Now the muscle is attached to the bone by what is called a tendon. One disadvantage here is the blood supply to the tendon is not as good as the muscle. Now the muscle is attached to the bone via this issue. So if there is an injury, and if the injury is to the muscle here, the healing is faster. Simply because there's more circulation, healing can take place faster. But if the injury is in the tendon, it's going to take a very long time, because the blood supply here is poor. Therefore the healing process is much slower. One example of a tear in the tendon is at the heel, at the Achilles heel. Some people get a tear of the tendon there, and for that to heal, sometimes you have to put them into a cement, or what is called plaster of paste or POP. So we have looked at bones, we have looked at muscles, we have looked at tendons. Now let's look at a joint to highlight to you other parts of the locomotor system. Just to orientate you, the one up there, this bone is the thigh bone coming to the knee. This is the knee joint. The whole thing is a knee joint. So this is the lower part of the thigh bone. This is the upper part of the leg bone. And what you see here is the patella. This is the small bone in front of the knee that can move around. We normally call it a knee cap. It's a mobile bone that is embedded in the tendon of the muscle. Okay, so now bone, bone. For the two bones to come together to form a joint, they can't knock each other. That means they cannot have a situation where the bone is knocking this bone. There has to be a cushion. And if you look at this cushion here, you will find there are two semicircular cushion. One, this is one, the other one is that. This semicircular cushions are called cartilage. They are pretty hard, but not as hard as the bone, so that when we walk, when we run, when the two bones knock each other, this tissue called the cartilage can absorb the knock and prevent the bone from wearing out. Now, the two bones are attached or brought together by muscles which are not seen, muscles that are found here, that are not seen here, but they are also held together by ligament. This ligament. Now, ligament is almost like a tendon. The only thing is a ligament is a little flattened out, whereas a tendon is more rounded. Now, for this whole system to work smoothly, you need some fluid in the cavity, and that is called the synovial fluid. Now, that is something like an engine oil, so that when we move around, our joints don't creak. Okay, now we have talked a little bit about the locomotor system. Let us see what is the overall function of this system. If you realize how a human being looks, all of us know that we have a particular structure. We can straight away look at a skeleton and say, this is the skeleton of a human being. So the first thing that is provided by the bones and muscles is it gives us a structure that is unique to the human being. And we are made in such a way that we can move around. And this is because the bones are joined together by joints. The more joints you have, the more sophisticated the movement can be. So this structure, the human locomotor system, provides motion. Now the other two functions, because this is so large in the human body, it also covers organs that are very soft. Starting from the good examples is our brain. Our brain is actually very soft. So the skull is such that it is made up of a number of bones, and these bones come together to form joints. And because it has to protect the brain, the joints in the skull are actually fixed joints. Though they are joints, they cannot move anymore. The bones, muscles, and joints form almost 75% of our body weight. Now, with such a huge mass, the body also converts this area into a storage. Another example of storage. Now, this is a bone, and this a portion of it is cut out to give you a view of the inside. Now, as you can see, there are lots of what we call spaces or lacuna. Now, this serve as storerooms for minerals. Bone is the largest reservoir of minerals. Bone itself has to be formed because of certain minerals. And I want to remind you here, it's not just calcium and magnesium. It also involves many other bones. The biggest component is protein. If you do not have a protein matrix that is strong, the minerals cannot be embedded in the bone. And many a time when we have osteoporosis, we actually, along with mineral deficiency, also have a protein deficiency in the bone. So even when you take minerals, it may not all be utilized that well. So when we talk about storage, the main thing is minerals. And please remember, there's a large amount of protein there. Now in this case, the locomotor system, the bones, the hollow part of the bones houses the blood forming system, what we call the bone marrow, which forms the red blood cells, white blood cells, and so on, and also houses a large part of the immune system. Now the immune system is a system that is found all over the body. That is why the last of the systems to be discovered and described and studied is the immune system. The immune system is formed of tissues scattered all over the body. For example, the spleen is part of the immune system. There is a small gland called the thymus gland that is located in front of the heart in the chest cavity, which is also part of the immune system. And there are several more, and there are also tissues that are found disseminated in the digestive system, in the lungs, in the kidney, which go to form the immune system. But a large part of it is in the bone marrow. The bone marrow is an area where there's a lot of antibodies that are formed, and therefore locomotor system also houses part of the immune system. Now if we look at it, we get all kinds of diseases, and we can say there's diseases of the bone, of the muscle, joints, and so on. Now this list is very long. This whole specialty is called orthopedics. But I'm sure you want to know what are the main things. Fortunately, all three tissues do not get all kinds of diseases. What we see most is in bone, we see osteoporosis and cancer of the bone, which is the most common. when you look at the muscle, surprisingly, you never get cancer of the muscle. Have you come across anyone who has got cancer of the muscle? We don't know why. Some people believe that because we keep moving around, the muscle doesn't have a chance to retain any cancer cells. Nobody knows. That's just a guess. But you could get a muscle disease due to autoimmune process where the muscle just degenerates, and it could be any part of the body. So very few diseases of the muscle. What can happen is you can get disuse. As we get older, we do not move a lot, the muscle gets weaker and smaller. Now when we come to the joints, here, because of the movement that we have throughout our life, there seems to be a preponderance of wear and tear. So we are looking at arthritis. So this is roughly what happens in all these three areas most of the time. There are exceptions to this rule. Let's look at just one or two examples of the common wear and tear thing. This is what is called osteoporosis. I have got two pictures here. This is what looks like a normal bone. You can see that the spaces are not that big because it's got a lot of substance. On this side you see bone which is thinned out. When we say thinned out, the spaces become larger and the walls are much thinner. Now this is what happens as we get older. I know this information might frighten some of you, but let me just add that yes, you may need calcium if you are not getting calcium enough in your diet, number one. Number two, when you do take calcium, you must make sure that you take the proportionate amount of magnesium so that the body can use the calcium in the right places. How much do you take? The ratio is 2 to 1. In other words, if you take 1000 milligrams of calcium, you need to take about 500. Usually the preparation is about 450 milligrams to 1000, roughly 1 is to 2. So if you take a supplement, make sure to be on the safe side. You take a calcium with a magnesium in the preparation. Now, arthritis. Arthritis, there are several types. The one you see here is more autoimmune, but the more common one is wear and tear. We saw the joints earlier, the knee joint earlier. What happens in a wear and tear is the part that wears out quickly is the cartilage. So when the cartilage gets worn out, the bones start knocking each other. And so what happens is we'll end up with a situation where after the wear and tear of the cartilage, we start wearing out the bone. Let me put back that slide again just to explain. So you see how an arthritis looks in the hands, and back to the knee joint. Once the cartilage thins out, then the bone and the bone start knocking each other, and there'll be wear and tear of the bone surface. Now, while the cartilage is in place and only slight wear and tear, good nutrition and rest can restore cartilage. Once the cartilage has worn out in large part, you cannot regenerate the cartilage. However, we have to be guided by the pain and discomfort that you have. So if the recovery is just enough not to cause pain, then that's fine. But if not, you may have to go in for surgical correction. So it is in everybody's interest to make sure, even when you don't have a problem, to make sure the joints are healthy and so on. So let's go back to the slide again where the arthritis was. Now, this same thing can happen in the knee joint area. The same thing can happen in the neck area or even in our feet. Why it happens in the neck and the back and the wrist and the hands is these are the areas where there's a lot of movement. So if there are changes in the joints, these are the areas where the degeneration is faster. Actually, here the prospects is very simple. We have to move. When I say move, we must move all parts of the body. Very often when I ask young boys today, do you play any games? Very serious faces. They tell me, yes. What games do you play? Computer games? And they weren't joking. They think that is what games are, It's amazing actually. Older folks like us forget to remain young. One of the things is you must jump. this is this might of course someone looking at you must be wondering, what is this old guy jumping in the middle of the field, is he? But basically that keeps us very limber. You could do it at home. You just go near the door or part of the wall and just target a certain height which is within reach. Don't try to be a hero on your first day. Just jump and reach that with your right hand several times, reach that with your left hand several times, and slowly over weeks and months try to improve the height. You'll be amazed how much better you feel. Now there are a number of problems that comes with overdoing this. One is the amount of wear and tear which exceeds our ability to repair. So you need to have more rest. Now if you do some exercise or rather over exercise, you get into lots of aches and pains. You can't do any other exercise for 4 or 5 days. It is very unlikely that you will go back to exercise if it becomes that irregular. So you need to make sure that you don't overdo. Okay. The next thing is maintain. Nutrition and rest cannot be overemphasized. In fact, in the building up of skills, stamina, strength, quickness of movement, endurance, mainly rests or depends on nutrition and rest, not the exercise. How long do we exercise? In a 24-hour period, maybe half an hour, maybe 1 hour. What about the rest 23 hours? You don't exercise. Why? Because that's the period you need to build up on the breakdown that has occurred in the body. And how efficient that is will depend on building up your capability in all the aspects of sports or fitness levels. So your nutrition and rest are very important. So it's very important that you get the right amount of nutrition and the right amount of rest so that the body can use the nutrition to repair your bodies. Now, the first one I would say is protein. I mentioned earlier about the importance of protein in our locomotor system, and protein is extremely important. Now, this is the time that I would like to switch to Vemma and tell you a little bit about the products that we have, which fits right into the maintenance of this system. As you know, body has got two types of products. One is burn and one is rest. It is a blue thing. These two are made in such a way that body burn helps to increase your metabolic rate during the daytime. Body rest helps to give you a good restful sleep so that cortisol levels, which is a hormone that is secreted in excess when there's a lot of stress, and who doesn't have stress in modern society, that cortisol helps to build up fat deposits. So this body is used at night. What you may not have realized is both have 20 grams of hydrolyzed protein. Now, the bones and joints not only need protein, it would be better if you get hydrolyzed protein. Hydrolyzed protein is excellent for connective tissue. So here are two products that you should not overlook simply because it is packaged under a weight loss program.